people ask me how I found Five Keys, and that too is a little bit of a surprise. I actually found it on Craigslist, the job posting.
Wow.
Steve has been the driving force behind the transformation of Five Keys from a humble beginning as the first ever charter high school serving adults in a county jail into a trailblazing nonprofit organization that now positively impacts the lives of over 25,000 at-risk and in-risk transitional age youth and adults across 14 counties in California. Through education, workforce development, re-entry, case management, and housing, Steve's vision is to provide comprehensive support for those affected by racism, poverty, trauma, and incarceration, empowering them to lead positive, self-determined lives.
I want to grow to 1,000 employees as well. So what's the secret sauce?
I think you have to be a little bit insane. Now you're in jail, and all of a sudden you're going to have to go to school. Hey, this is a hell of a lot better than sitting in a jail cell all day.
You're taking individuals and you're empowering them to leave a positive change in society or just be a positive member of society. That is the big win here. The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics, including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. I'm your host, Ania Chowdhury.
And Vlad Suleiman.
Today, we are honored to have a truly remarkable guest, Steve Good, the president and CEO of Five Keys Schools and Programs. Under Steve's leadership, Five Keys has grown exponentially, with its annual budget increasing from $2 million in 2008 to over $90 million in 2021, and now employing over 600 formerly incarcerated individuals. Today, Five Keys has over 1,100 employees. His relentless dedication to creating a meaningful change has earned Five Keys numerous accolades, including the Hart Vision Charter School of the Year in 2014 and the Innovations in American Government Award from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Governance. Operating across more than 120 locations in 14 California counties, Five Keys offers a diverse array of programs that share the common goal of lifting individuals and families out of poverty. Steve Good's unwavering commitment to ending mass incarceration and his innovative approach to restorative justice has been a game changer for thousands of lives. We are truly privileged to have him on our show today. Steve, welcome to the show. And I do apologize for that long intro.
It's great. I actually want to co-opt that and use it for my outgoing voice message on my phone. So everyone has to sit through 5 minutes of hearing how great I am.
That is a fantastic way to reduce the number of voicemails that you get.
This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store.
Steve, I want to take you back 25 years ago. I typically like to take individuals, guests back all the way to go when they initially started. So you were a principal for several years, as well as an executive director managing several private schools in California. And your grad degree was focused on educational leadership. I kind of want to, why this industry? Why did you end up pursuing this field? Do you have early memories of those times?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when I tell people the truth, they're sometimes a little surprised. I loved college. I spent 10 years in college, changing my major several times, and I was in no hurry whatsoever to get a job. My sister was a teacher and my mom was a teacher, and I remember them both having summers off. And so I thought, this sounds like the perfect job. Work 9 months out of the year, take the summer off,
right? Work
with young people.
Right.
What could go wrong? And the funny thing is that once I started teaching, I never took a summer off because I actually fell in love with the job. I stumbled into it thinking it was going to be a easy gig with a lot of time off, and it turned out to be a career of passion. Teaching led me to administration, which wasn't really wasn't really one of my goals, but I was asked if I'd be interested in applying for an assistant principal job, which I did, and I got it. Shortly thereafter, I became a principal. Then I ran a private school district. Then I went back to public schools um, as a principal, and I loved it. It was, it's just a great career teaching and being a school principal, and that kind of led me to Five Keys.
Wow.
Oh, that's very interesting story. Could you please walk me through the early days of Five Keys back in 2008? I know that it was originally formed back in 2003, so I would like to learn more about the moment when you decided to take this position at Five Keys.
Yeah, right. So Five Keys was founded by Sunny Schwartz, an attorney for the Sheriff's Department. She's also an author of Dreams from the Monster Factory, an incredible book, and Sheriff Mike Hennessy. They saw the connection between people ending up in jail and constantly returning to jail and the lack of education. About 70% of the people in a county jail at the time had never finished high school, and they figured there must be a nexus between, winding up in jail, breaking the law, and not completing high school. So they found a little bit of a loophole in California charter law that allowed them to open a high school that served adults. And that's how Five Keys was founded. I joined in 2008. At the time, Five Keys had about 200 students and a staff of 13. I personally was a principal of another school in San Francisco. My wife was pregnant with twins, and I was kind of looking for a little bit of a change, and Five Keys seemed like the perfect opportunity for me. They were, interested in growing the model and replicating it and going deeper into work. And that's what my background had been in with prior jobs when I ran a private school district. So it seemed like a perfect fit. People ask me how I found Five Keys, and that too is a little bit of a surprise. I actually found it on Craigslist, the job posting. I was
Wow.
I was randomly scrolling through opportunities in education, and I saw this posting on Craigslist for a executive director of a school in the county jail, and I thought that's exactly what I want to do. And that's how I landed at Five Keys. And it's been quite the journey ever since. In 2008, like I said, we had about 200 students and a staff of 13. And the truth is that we were underfunded, and we were struggling a little bit. And so I realized that we had to attract funding two different ways. One was by growing our enrollment, and the other was by expanding the programs that we offered and start going after grants and contracts and philanthropy to help us become sustainable. So in essence, what we did was we met with the sheriff. We said, we're only serving right now about 10% of the folks that are in county jail. We should, increase this to 30%. And the sheriff and Sonny were totally open to it, and they gave me essentially free reign of the jail to expand the school all throughout the county jail system. That was significant in terms of increasing our enrollment. It was also significant in terms of increasing access to education for for those that were incarcerated. It literally was transformational in the jail, from a place where inmates typically would spend a significant part of their day, watching Oprah or, playing checkers or cards or whatever, to at the highlight of Five Keys in the county jail, 1/3 of them were actually full high school students. So that's kind of like the early evolution and growth. But one thing that we realized shortly after was, it's one thing to work with somebody in the county jail and help them, complete their education. But they're not really in jail long enough to make substantial gains, many of them. Some do graduate from the county jail for certain. We've had over 2,000 people to date get their high school diploma while incarcerated. But everyone's getting out, and most of them getting out won't have finished their education. So we realized we need to set up community schools. So we partnered with nonprofits in the neighborhoods that the individuals were returning to. That way, when they exited the county jail and they went to receive services from a local nonprofit, they would actually have Five Keys on site. and they'd be able to walk down the hallway and continue their education with us. In some cases, with the same teachers. We'd have their records of where they left off. They would be accessing the services at the nonprofit to assist with their reentry. At the same time, they'd be able to complete their high school diploma with 5 keys.
Mm-hmm. I know that now you employ around 1,100 people.
Right.
And as before we started, Anayat was introducing us. We employ 50 employees full time. So my question to you is, what's the secret sauce? I want to grow to 1,000 employees as well. So what's the secret sauce?
Yeah, I think you have to be a little bit insane. I mean, truthfully, the secret sauce is, for us, it wasn't an overnight process. It took us, 15 years to get to this point. Growth was, at times it was very slow, and at times it was rapid, but it was also really intentional how we went about growing. We initially started looking at other counties and seeing, like, 5 keys is a model that's working great in San Francisco. Maybe this is a model that could work, work throughout the state. While we were considering that, at the same time, other counties were looking at San Francisco and reaching out to the sheriff in San Francisco and saying, hey, we want to learn more about 5 keys. Can we come visit? And so gradually, more and more sheriff's departments from across the state would come visit the county jails just to look at the 5 keys school. After visiting, inevitably, they contacted me and said, look, what would it take to bring 5 keys to Los Angeles? What would it take to bring 5 keys to San Bernardino or Alameda or Sonoma or San Mateo? And so we organically began growing that way. We went down to Los Angeles. We opened the school in the county jails down there. Then we went to San Bernardino. Then we went to San Mateo, then Alameda County. Eventually, we spread the school out to 9 different counties, and we're in 25 jails. And with that, every time we opened up a school program inside of the county jail, we looked to the community to see where folks were going to access services once they left the county jail. And it was in those locations where we started expanding our community schools. So that was, the initial growth of 5 keys as a school. But the second part of that story is we also realized that a lot of the nonprofits we were working with, they were doing services that we were perfectly capable of doing as well. And we began providing those services also in the county jail. So we saw how reentry was working and how other nonprofits were doing that. We thought, well, we're working with these individuals already. Why don't we do some of the reentry work too? That way we can provide the wraparound services the students need. So we began partnering with sheriff's departments to provide reentry services and a whole host of other things, cognitive behavioral programming, substance abuse programming, helping them gain access to employment and housing upon reentry. So it was kind of a natural evolution. And we started going after contracts in the various counties we worked at to help us support and fund these efforts to support our students. Well, we became pretty successful with that. And what happened was people saw 5 keys is doing these wraparound services for clients. Maybe they would be interested in moving into other areas like housing or transitional employment. So literally just through our work and our reputation, we began being approached to offer other services like housing for the unsheltered, transitional employment for the formerly incarcerated. And there was no grand plan behind going into housing or transitional employment, although it was kind of in the back of our mind. It was really just through the work that we had done and the reputation we established as being a reliable partner. So fast forward to today, through those connections and counties reaching out to us, we began opening homeless shelters, navigation centers, started transitional employment programs with the state. And that led to where we are today, where today we operate 12 different forms of housing for the formerly unsheltered. We offer housing for women returning from prison who were suffered horrific domestic violence prior to being incarcerated. We have transitional employment programs across the state that we do through Caltrans, where we We hire folks that are immediately released from prison. They work with us for 6 months, and then we work to get them full-time employment. Sometimes that full-time employment is with 5 Keys. In fact, last year we assisted 271 folks to the transitional employment program get full-time employment. But these are all programs we've done to expand and grow. But one thing that I really consider unique about 5 Keys is our whole agency actually is a program, because as you referenced, we employ about 600 formerly incarcerated folks. That takes a special commitment to your workforce to have individuals that are coming directly from incarceration to employment. Prison breaks people. It does serious damage to people when they leave. Being incarcerated for 10, 20, 30 years, living in a cage, that has a huge impact on a person and their psyche and their ability to cope. And so when we take them as employees, it places an obligation on us to also, go deeper in our training and the work that we have to do with our employees to help them, kind of assimilate back into society. So I view 5 Keys overall as a program. I view our staff and our employees as participants. So we're an employer, we're providing these services, but we're also providing an employment services for the formerly incarcerated. And there's a level of responsibility on us in a way to treat our employees, this cohort of employees, as participants in a program as well. And it's not meant to be demeaning in any way. It's meant to be supportive and to, help folks, learn some new skills or learn skills that were forgotten, 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
Steve, do you have people coming up to you sometimes and saying, why are we offering education? Why are we offering education to people in jail, for people who are incarcerated? They don't deserve education. It's bizarre to me, but I think it's safe to say that there are plenty of people who have that opinion. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually my favorite question. I get that question all the time, especially, like when we rolled out new computers and tablets for our students that are incarcerated, and people say, my kid doesn't get a new computer at school. Well, I'd say your kid isn't in jail right now and might be in jail for harming someone and isn't going to get out of jail. And without education, what are they going to do? So, my response generally is, it's a public safety initiative, first and foremost. I mean, it's a human rights issue as well. Everybody has a right to an education. Our education system is, largely broken in the United States. We're 25th in the world for education, but we're number 1 for locking people up. So we're pretty good at one thing and not so good at the other, despite our inflated view of ourselves in the U.S. So it's a public safety initiative. Everybody in jail is getting out at some point. When you go to prison, nearly everybody is getting in prison, even lifers. It's only a very small percentage of individuals that are incarcerated that are not getting out. So my question to that person is, you have somebody in jail that's potentially there for a violent crime or hurting somebody. They're getting out. They're coming back to your neighborhood. They're in all of our neighborhoods. Wouldn't you want that person to come back out being a safer person or being a productive person or, being someone that's less likely to harm someone again? I certainly would. I don't want someone coming out of prison who hasn't gone through programs, or jails that hasn't gone through programs to work on the core issues that, landed them in incarceration in the first place. So it's a public safety issue first. The second issue is it just makes fiscal sense. It's incredibly cheaper to educate somebody than to lock them up. It's about $10,000 a year to educate someone. It's up to $100,000 or more a year to lock somebody up. So it just makes fiscal sense. I mean, if you're able to provide somebody an education at the added expense of $10,000 a year while they're incarcerated, and that reduces the likelihood of them returning to jail or prison by 70%, 70%. Think of the savings. That's $100,000 a year for the next 10 years. So that's $1 million you would save for that one person not returning to jail, over and over again for, 10 years at the cost of $10,000. That's a pretty good return on investment. And the fact is
So,
that people in
Steve,
county jails, so many of them are doing life on the installment plan where they get arrested, go to the streets, return to jail, get arrested.
yep.
It's just a cycle,
Yeah.
And so for that $10,000,
So,
you're saving, millions over time.
so Steve, my question here is, if all the data points to a safer community, significantly cost reduction to go ahead and carry this out, why do we continue to spend such little for correctional educational programs? How come all of the online it says 100 billion? We know it's more than 100 billion that we spend to lock up people. It goes to overhead. It goes to running the prison, but very little of it finds its way into educational programs, into other educational programs that are really meant to guide the incarcerated. So why has this not changed? And obviously, this is a rhetorical question, but it's to spark a discussion. How come on a state level, on a federal level, why are we not moving anywhere? I mean, we're moving, but it's very slow.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, especially when you consider, that a child of an incarcerated parent is 8 times more likely themselves to end up incarcerated. So it becomes a generational issue as well. By not providing the services in county jail, we're ensuring that we have a pipeline of people to end up in jail again, which, it absolutely makes no sense. But I think there's a couple things going on here. One is, on the county jail level, that's different from state prison. So at the statewide level in California, we have the CDCR, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And they have a whole branch that it's dedicated to providing educational vocational training. And it's headed by Dr. Brantley Choate in California. And he's making actually incredible gains in that area, more so than his predecessors, 10 times, tenfold. And the state is really beginning to realize that in state prison, we need to expand programs, expand opportunities for education. There's now, college access in several prisons in California. So there's a sea change happening right now, but it's slow and not fast enough. At the county jail level, it's a little more problematic because each county jail is run by a sheriff, and each sheriff, in a way, is kind of the king of their own kingdom. And it's really up to each county what they're going to do to support the incarcerated. Now, there have been laws that have been passed that require inmate education and programming and things like that that counties have to follow, but it's not backed with funding. It's not backed, with any real teeth. And you can have a really small program that's insignificant and not moving the needle at all. And that in many ways, qualifies you as meeting the requirement. That said, the counties that we work in, overwhelmingly, the county sheriffs are very interested in, maximizing, services for the inmates. Absolutely. In San Francisco, that's huge. Alameda as well. San Mateo, San Bernardino, Los Angeles now with the new sheriff. Yes, again, the last sheriff, not so much. But the problem is despite that desire to bring inmate programs and services, it's expensive, and it's not always built into the sheriff's department budget. So while we bring our own funding in for the school, there's a lot of ancillary funding that has to go with that. There has to be funding for support deputies.
Right.
Because when you bring in a school, then you have to have inmates move to different areas in order to attend school. Jails aren't necessarily constructed for schooling. Some are. San Francisco actually built a jail around a school. Los Angeles has as well as expanded the opportunities for classrooms in the jail. But a lot of that funding also has to come then from, the city council or the county board of supervisors to help supplement the funding to support programs. And so then you have counties that are, trying to decide, do we want to provide inmate services or fill potholes? So,
Right.
it's a
Right.
hugely complex issue, and it's choices that have to be made with, a finite, scarce set of resources, and then making the decision, the opportunity cost of where should the money go. And I think that there's just not enough education out there in the communities, at the local levels, at the city council meetings, at the board of supervisors, to help folks understand that the investment in those that are incarcerated is an investment in, the security and the safety and the future of our communities. So many people that come out of county jail and prison contribute to our homeless problem. So we have this
Yeah.
homelessness, incarceration, police reform. These are some of the biggest challenges facing California, the United States right now, and they're all connected. And
Wow.
so,
Steve, how do you create an environment where students who have previously failed traditional education settings, how do they find success at Five Keys? What are you doing? Is there a specific pedagogical approach, or do you just have various support systems in place where
yeah.
students who are, from various age levels, they're coming at various different reading levels and math levels? How are you structuring these programs? I'd love some more insight into that.
Yeah, that's a great question. The typical profile of a student coming into Five Keys is they're about 26 years old. They're an individual of color from a marginalized community that suffered, historic systemic institutional racism. They come to us with about a fifth and sixth grade reading and math level. They dropped out of school somewhere between middle school and high school. Those are some pretty terrible statistics. But what the statistics don't tell you is there's nothing wrong with the intelligence of these folks. They've been systematically excluded from opportunities that individuals like myself have had made available to them. And so what we do is we do a couple things. One is we design our own curriculum and content. We realized early on that, off-the-shelf textbooks, they're culturally not competent. They don't relate to the student's experience of who we have. They're written from a very white, Eurocentric, America's great perspective. It doesn't talk about the true history. Our textbooks don't talk about the true history of the United States, which is, not really relatable to many of our students. So we write almost all of our own curriculum. We have a staff of curriculum writers that over the years have been doing this. In writing our own curriculum, not only are we able to, tell a little more truthful story in many ways of what's happening in the world, but we're also to make the content relatable to our students. Not only relatable, we're able to make it accessible. By accessible, I mean we're able to teach the same theories, the same concepts, the same intellectual level of work is required, but we're breaking it down in such a way that somebody who is struggling at a certain reading level or struggling at a certain math level, they're able to access the content and digest it in the same way that somebody who'd be able to read a scholarly paper would be able to digest it, because they have the capability and the capacity to. They just haven't been given that skill yet. And so while we're working on making the content accessible, we're simultaneously working on building up those skills of, improving literacy rates and improving numeracy. And so, I mean, that's kind of our approach. Our approach is, through cultural humility, working with our staff to get to know our students, not just going there with a broad set of assumptions. I mean, I'm talking broad assumptions right now, but on the ground level, where our staff are working with the individuals, it's really coming from a spot of cultural humility, where we're able to hear what the students are saying, learn about them, partner with them in their education, and have them take the lead kind of in where their educational route needs to go.
And do you see typically resistance from incarcerated individuals when you first enrolling them into these classes?
Sure. Yeah, we do. But it's resistance on a couple of levels. One is you're an individual that hasn't attended school in 20 years. You know that you struggled in school at that time. You didn't have a good experience at all. You had a very bad experience. You know that you struggle with reading, maybe struggle with math. and now you're in jail, and all of a sudden you're going to have to go to school. That doesn't sound great to a lot of people, and rightfully so. It's I mean, it's driven out of fear, and I get it. I mean, I've certainly, I'm a reasonably accomplished professional. I've gone to, seminars and workshops with some real heavy hitters, and I've walked in there and been a little bit intimidated, like, whoa, I'm not sure I belong here. I'm not sure that, I'm not sure my resume, qualifies me to be in this group. And so, I'm somebody with a reasonable level of success. Imagine somebody who, completely different set of life circumstances, and now you have to go to school, and they're going to be subject to tests and lectures and expected to read and write. It's frightening. But what happens shortly after the first couple of weeks, they see that it's, these fears and assumptions that they had about school are alleviated when they see the approach, and they see the partnership with the instruction. They see that the teacher is really an advocate for their success. The teacher is on their side. That we're all there. We're not the deputy sheriffs running the jail. We're not the ones enforcing the rules. We're the ones there to try and help everybody.
Right.
And they quickly see this, and they start learning, and they start realizing, holy crap, I'm learning new stuff that I didn't think that it was accessible to me before. That end, the real reality is, hey, this is a hell of a lot better than sitting in a jail cell all day. I'm getting out. I get to interact with other people. Yeah. I get to learn about what's happening on the outside. I get to hear from a teacher that cares about me. I'm reading things for the first time that I never thought that I would read. This is really cool, and I'm really enjoying this. And I can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel, because now we've shown them what we get their prior transcripts. They show them what they've done in the past. We assess them. We show them what they need to do to move forward, and we set out a plan for them. And so it becomes like, holy cow, all of a sudden, this is a real thing. And after they start accumulating units and they start showing it with their family, all of a sudden family members that thought that, my son or daughter was never going to get a high school diploma was like, holy cow, so-and-so is going to school, and look at the progress they're making. Look, they just sent me their latest report card. They just sent me an essay they wrote. And so they start getting this reinforcement from their own personal community, family, and support systems. And so those things, really contribute to the success of our students. And by and large, once you've enrolled with us, people want to stay with us because it's a break from the day. It's stimulating to them. It's giving them hope. It's helping them achieve something that the majority of them thought that they would never be able to achieve. So it provides benefits on multiple layers to our students.
Mm-hmm. But also, isn't it that in the first place, because of the poor education, that they didn't receive education in the first place, they appeared in this situation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. That's, that goes back to, when we talk about the school to prison pipeline and, the undeniable connection between having 70% of the people in a county jail without a basic high school education. I mean, there's obviously a nexus between what happened in their early experiences in school to what, to now they're in prison. You can't look at something with a 70%, correlation and say, this isn't, these two things are exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. They're inextricably tied together. And it's true that early experience in school is one of the factors that also contribute to people being, intimidated and being frightened about attending 5 Keys in the first place. After so many years of being away from education, having that, bad experience in their mind. I mean, I still have a bad experience memory of my third grade teacher, for God's sakes. And now imagine if I had, bad experience with my third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth grade teacher, then said, screw it, I'm out of here. If you've had, just a continuous cycle of bad experiences in school, why on earth would you want to do that again? It doesn't make any sense. So that's, one of the biggest things that we have to do too, is we have to make learning fun, interesting, and, accessible, and be able to show, our students that they are making progress and gains. Because if they're not making progress and gains, then we're wasting our time, but more importantly, we're wasting their time, and we're not doing our job. And they're not going to stay with us. I do want to say,
100%.
I do want to say too, though, one of the things that we've seen in county jails and running the school is, and the other programs we run, often there is resistance from the frontline deputy. So the sheriff might be 100% behind you in this program, and so might be the entire command staff. They've read the research, they understand the literature, they know that education is the right thing to do, not only for those incarcerated, but for society as a whole. But often the individual deputy that's been working in the jails for such a long time, they're like, what the hell are we doing now sending these guys to school? This is, I was really comfortable with my routine of showing up every day. I knew how things work. Now I have to move. I've got a group of inmates who move from one part of the jail to another part of the jail, stand around while they're going to school all day. This isn't what I signed up to be a deputy for. But what we find is after we're in a jail for a certain amount of time, they realize, holy crap, discipline problems have gone down. The loud noises in the day rooms of TVs blaring and people arguing goes away. The jails actually become safer places to work. They become more calm. And, the deputies start realizing, hey, jails and schools and programs in the jail are a good thing. In fact, when COVID came and we had to shut down statewide for a period, and jails had to go back to how they were before without schools and programs because of the fear of COVID. And I got to tell you, they're hitting us up hard now. Like, how can we get things back to the way they were? Because they didn't like working in those environments. They didn't realize, how bad it was. And they want the school and they want programs. They want to see the inmates busy again during the day, improving their lives because it makes the jails easier. That deputy that used to go home at the end of the shift just pissed off because he had a crappy day. Is now like, not going home and feeling the need to, slam 6 beers to relax. Because the job becomes less stressful.
Is it a mandated program or they enrolling themselves? I mean, like voluntarily.
Yeah. So it depends on what jail you're in. It kind of operates differently throughout the state. It's mandated to the extent that often you're placed in the program based upon where your housing is. Part of it's a housing puzzle. So, there's not infinite housing for the incarcerated. So they have to be placed someplace. And if you don't have a high school diploma and you're placed in the school dorm, then because that's where the bed is, then you're expected to go to school. If you absolutely do not want to go to school, no one is forcing you to go there. You simply, you put in a request and you'll be moved out. We do ask that you stay 48 hours with us to make sure that you're making the right decision. After that 48 hours, if you're done, that's fine, you're done. But more than likely, you're going to be placed into another program. Then you might be placed into a pod or a housing unit that focuses on substance abuse, or you might be placed in a housing unit that focuses on violence. So in extent, it really depends on where your house. If you're incredibly unlucky, you could be placed in a housing unit that has no services at all. And then there you go. You're simply sitting in your cell all day long doing nothing.
I'd love to talk about some of the results from your program because they're really impressive. I read some information and it's truly remarkable. So let me make sure if I get the stats correct. Almost 70% of individuals or 66% of individuals that are released find their way back into getting arrested again. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Outside of this program, just in general.
Right. In general, I mean, there's several measures, federal prison versus state prison versus county jail, but I'd say it's 100% safe to say somewhere between 50 and 66% of people recidivate within 1 year. Yes.
And so what kind of results have you seen? I'd love to hear a little bit about any results you can share from the rearrest rates from your program, or it's just simply the increase in reading levels and math levels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see significant levels in a reduction in recidivism. And I mean, one of the strongest cases for programs like ours is in 2017, 2018, we ran a program for then Attorney General Kamala Harris, obviously now our vice president. We ran her signature program called Back on Track in the LA County jails. In that program, we provided high school education vocational training, cognitive behavioral treatment, which is basically thinking for a change. It's a program to help people, understand the broken thinking patterns that they have and help them, come up with new thinking patterns when confronted with a situation. And, we got a choice between doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. That with intensive case management to help them get out. We found that our recidivism rate for that program was 17%. That's, in my mind, 17%.
Wow.
That is a home run.
17%.
17%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
In our other programs, we see a recidivism rate generally around 33%, sometimes significantly lower.
Very incredible.
Yeah. Just the math on that is, it's millions in terms of savings.
Yeah.
So that's it. Reading levels.
Forget about the cost savings, right? That's not even
Right.
point number one. How about point number two? You're making, it's not even about making a safer environment. You're taking individuals and you're empowering them to leave a positive change in society or just be a positive member of society. That is, unfortunately, that's not bullet point number one because everything runs on money. I understand that, but that is the big win here. That is the big win here. We can take formerly incarcerated individuals and now they go back out into your society, and they want to have a meaningful impact into
Right.
society by whatever means, and that is such a big win. And especially if you can do so with such huge cost savings,
Right.
we're talking about a win-win situation here all around.
Right. Truthfully, the cost savings is the icing on the cake. It's also, unfortunately, one of the things that gets, people's attention. Oh, wow, we're saving money. But when you come down to it from, from a humanistic standpoint, it is really about the individual, about the lives that we're saving. And it's like I said, it's a crime, incarceration is a generational problem. Most people in jail have families and kids. And, helping that person get out and not go back to jail is helping their family. It's helping that child. We don't get to choose our parents. And if we could help that parent become a better parent, reunite with their family, that right there is a huge reward. But also, like you mentioned, from the public safety standpoint, I don't want the guy living next door to me, coming out of jail without any training or prison without any training. I want to know that he worked on himself to become a better person. I want to know that I'm going to feel safe, with somebody that, potentially was incarcerated for a violent crime. And that's one of the big things too, is, helping that person become a safer person. And frankly, nobody wants to be a dangerous or violent person. Nobody wants to be addicted to drugs.
Right.
Nobody wants to be homeless. Nobody woke up one day with a needle in their arm saying, this is great. I finally reached my life's potential. That's
it's a very good point.
Yeah. And so
it's a very good point. Steve, I'd love to talk about Furniture Annex. So I know it's a luxury furniture store in Stockton, California. Congrats. I know you opened it up in just last year, 2022.
Yeah.
I'd love to learn more about this because I know 100% of the proceeds go directly to the funding of the social justice programs at Five Keys.
Yep.
Can you talk? I just like the first time I've heard of it, a luxury furniture store by an organization such as yours. Please tell us more about it.
Right. Yeah. It's one of our two social ventures to help support our programs. The Furniture Annex was started just a few months ago. Literally, we were approached by a major luxury retailer of fine furniture who had a warehouse in Stockton, and they approached us and said, "Listen, we've heard of your programs. We at our warehouse we often have overstocked items or items that are slightly blemished, and truthfully, one of our options is we just destroy the stuff." And they have a retail store, a second store as well that they sell their products also, but they have more product often than they could even stock this store with. So they said, would you guys be interested in taking the items that either we can't sell because they have a slight blemish in them, or we're just so overstocked that we need to get rid of them. Or discontinue items as well if they discontinue a particular line of furniture.
Right.
So we said yes, we would love to. So that's how that partnership began. We found a warehouse in Stockton. We connected with the Chamber of Commerce and the City Council and the Board of Supervisors to see, what sort of support they'd be interested in providing for us. And it's been overwhelming, the support that we've received from the county, that we received from the city, in terms of referrals, in terms of them showing up, of hosting events there. And yeah, we hired a furniture mechanic that anytime we get something with a minor blemish, or like, some screws are loose or something, that we can repair and store so it looks, as good as new. But even the discontinued items that we have in the showroom, we're selling items that, like a bureau for your perhaps for your dining room, that might go for $4,000. We're selling for $400. We have
Wow.
dining room tables that go for $6,000 that we're selling for $600. So we're literally knocking 90% off the prices, and it's been great. It's been great for Stockton. People have come to us in Stockton and said, Stockton needs a store like this. This is amazing. And it's run by, 100% of our staff there are formerly incarcerated. Every penny that we have goes back into our transitional employment program to help, with case management and other services that our contracts and grants simply don't pay for. It's a great venture. It's in Stockton, California, 611 West Fremont Street. Open Wednesdays through Sunday. We're actually going to be starting a new program there. I laugh because it sounds so silly. We are going to be starting next month a champagne and espresso brunch at the Furniture Annex, where you can come in, have a glass of champagne, have an espresso, have a pastry while you're shopping for furniture at the store. It's our staff, have taken.
I love that.
Have taken such pride in it. If you go to our website, 5keys.org, and click on the Furniture Annex links, you'll see the photos. Our staff, decorates the showroom, so it looks like you have no idea that this is, who we are. You think you're walking into a luxury store.
Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny little secret that's going to no longer be a secret. But it's hilarious. So for the Furniture Annex, we have all these masterful pieces of furniture, and we thought, Dave Bates, who is our vice president of reentry, who runs this program, says we got to decorate the store so people walk in there and they think they're walking into a Pottery Barn or something like this. So he goes out. He goes to the Goodwill. He lives in Santa Barbara. He goes to the Goodwill in Santa Barbara, and he buys lamps and plates and vases and all this stuff, and he decorates the entire showroom. So every table, every bookshelf has stuff all over it. It's beautiful. And it's all from the Goodwill. After the first couple of our opening, people wanted to buy the stuff. They didn't realize that, that the lamps and the vases were, all from a thrift shop. And so I'm like, shit, Dave, we gotta put price tags on this stuff. A $13 lamp will sell for $50, and it's hilarious. It's now, literally like once a week he's going to the Goodwill to buy lamps, and they're beautiful. I mean, it's really incredible. Yeah, they're beautiful, and vases to decorate the place, and those sell as much as the furniture.
Yes, soon I'll be driving to San Francisco. I'll step by. It's on the way. Actually, I just checked it. All right, I will step by the store.
That's great. That's great.
I love that. And Steve, I have one last question on my end. I think Vlad has one more. Is there any story that comes to your mind that you can share with us, whether it's through a specific individual? I mean, I know you have over 1,100 employees. You of course don't get to interact with incarcerated students on a day-to-day basis, but you've been running the organization for so many years. So is there a story you can remember, whether it's an individual, whether it's a staff member, something that just, once a month you just think about before going to sleep, like, wow, man, like I will forever remember that story? Anything of that nature that you can share with us?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple that come to mind. One is, it happens almost on a near weekly basis. And that's when I go and visit our shelters and housing programs, which are staffed 80% by formerly incarcerated folks. It is a regular and reoccurring thing for somebody to walk up to me that works for us and say to me, Hey, Steve,
Right.
you probably don't remember me, do you? But I was in the county jail 10 years ago going to Five Keys. And I got my diploma and I met you then.
Wow.
And now I work for you. I mean, that
Wow.
just every
Yeah.
single time, that is I kid you not, the greatest reward. Um, the other is, I mean, there's many stories. I mean, I can think of Tammy. Um, she's a director of our Home Free program. Um, she herself was a participant in Five Keys programs. She she was a woman who suffered, immense abuse. Um, the abuse at the hegemony of a male, um, and being under the domination of this male landed her in prison for crimes that um, were really the consequence and result of an abusive partner. She came out of prison, um, went to our home free program, which is 12 units, 12 apartments on Treasure Island, double occupancy, 2-bedroom apartments that with partnership through San Francisco and City Build and a bunch of other individuals, we transformed these apartments into beautiful living spaces, um, furnished furnished with Pottery Barn furniture. Contractors donated flooring, painted the place. We renovated these units. We wanted to create a safe and dignified space for women returning from prison after the abuse they suffered. She went to that program. She lived there. She's now the director of that program. She recently got married
Wow.
at that site at Home Free with her husband, Damien. Damien has a similar story. He was in prison for many years. He got out, heard of Five Keys. He was one of the individuals we hired while on parole. Worked with us for several years, first as an entry-level ambassador in a homeless shelter. Today, he's the assistant director of our Embarcadero Navigation Center, and he and Tammy got married. So, I mean, what a beautiful story. These
Wow.
two individuals, both coming out of incarceration, lives destroyed. Like I said, prison breaks people. They came out. Healing is a
Yeah.
journey. They're still on that journey. Stellar employees, advanced through the ranks. Now they're both, leading their respective programs, and they're married. And they got married at Five Keys. Literally at Five Keys, they got married.
Incredible.
So,
Well, that just shows you how impactful your program is.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, Steve. So at the end of every interview, we ask one last question, which actually allows us to learn a little bit about more of yourself. So, who has been the strongest or most inspiring person in your life, and what lessons have you learned from them?
yeah, that's a really, really hard question to answer. I think it's changed over time, and I don't think I could pinpoint, one exact person. Um, I mean, uh, I'm inspired daily by my kids, my children. I'm inspired daily by our students. Um, I'm inspired daily by our staff and the commitment that they have. Um, I'm inspired by the founder of Five Keys, Sonny Schwartz, who's an incredibly dear friend and a great source of support and inspiration. Um, I'm inspired by. I'm right now doing a residency and fellowship at Stanford University, and I'm inspired by the students there. And I just think I'm inspired by the upcoming generation. The future is literally our kids. It's our college students right now. It's our high school students. I'm inspired by their social conscience. I'm inspired by their sick of how things are going right now, the bipartisanship, the polarization in our country, the fact that we can't have conversations we don't like with people we don't like or disagree with. When you stop having the conversations, then it's all over with. What's the point at that point? I'm inspired by them wanting to see change and their hope for the future. I'm inspired by them seeing the crisis with the climate. It's I really am hopeful for the future because I have so much faith in the younger generation coming up. So, one person, it's hard to say, but I find inspiration on a daily basis through multiple sources.
I love that answer. Steve, it has been an absolute pleasure. Your passion and commitment to breaking the cycle of incarceration, addressing systemic issues, and empowering people to lead positive and self-determined lives are truly inspiring. So we want to express our heartfelt gratitude for sharing your insights and experiences and the remarkable story of 5 Keys with our listeners. For our listeners who would like to learn more about 5 Keys schools and programs or support their mission, we encourage you to visit their website at 5keys.org. You can also check out their Furniture Annex store in Stockton, California, if you're nearby, where 100% of the proceeds go directly to funding their social justice programs. Steve, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store.